Our newsletter. It's one of the best newsletters going out there. I have to tell you, I was so proud of our newsletter when I formed this group to be like the Tucson group, and when our newsletter got better than the Tucson newsletter, I keep sending it to them just to rub it in, because we do a lot of communicating here. Okay, so right now, you should have a name tag on you if you're not a policeman. And if you don't know, well, John, shame on you. You should know better. Right.
This is John Ray Patch.
John Ray Patch, right. Everybody else should have a name tag. If you don't have a name tag, please put one on. If you're a policeman, please. It's okay to be recognized here. They're proud of you. We found someone's keys. It's got a lost thing. And to be honest, folks, we're going to turn them in and turn them over to the right people. Okay. Everyone should have a name tag. If you don't have a name tag, you should get one. This is your first time right now. If you want to have our newsletter, and this is your first time, you need to hold up your hand. Now, if you do not want our newsletter, you do not have to hold up your hand. But if you want our newsletter and you're new here, please, Marlena will bring you an information sheet that we would like you to fill out. Keep your hand up if you're new and you need to give us your information so you can get our newsletter. It's a very fine newsletter. Okay, remember, restrooms are out the door, a little to the right. We will open with introductions and announcements and then move on to our speakers, 2 speakers today. This meeting is from noon to 1. We have the space until 2, so you may stay and talk to people, write letters or postcards. Be sure to check our information table belly up on our bar. This is one of the few bars in the city I can recommend to you. Now there we have information to fill your soul. Organizations make announcements, and we are happy to put out announcements about any organizations having anything coming up, so please share with us and share with our organization. And if you want it in the newsletter, give it to Marlena. Okay, be sure to check that, yeah, we want to. Okay, Bob Sturdivant, here we go. Bob.
How's everybody doing? Had a good holiday? All right, my name is Robert Sturdivant. I head up the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition. We have our monthly meeting on the second Thursday. That'll be June 8th at 315 West Court Street, which is the Fire Museum. Everyone's encouraged to come. All are welcome. I'm a singer in a group, a band, and we're singing at the AFL-CIO Cope Dinner on Friday, which is the major fundraiser for the political arm of the AFL-CIO. I love this event. It's nice to see everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor James Wolf.
What if I don't use this? Can you face everybody? You don't need it. I'm a teacher. I can yell. Need it? All right. I'll take it. Sorry, I'm James Wolf. I'm the mayor of Mount Healthy, and I'm out here today because I am going to run for county commission next year. Some of you might be familiar with me, some of you are not. I have the experience I believe is necessary to win this race. I've had 12 years of elected experience in Mount Healthy. I had 10 years on city council, and then I've been the mayor for the past 2 years. So I have plenty of experience for this office. I also have labor experience. I'm vice president. I have been the vice president of my teachers union, the Mount Healthy Teachers Association. I also am currently the bargaining chair. I've been the bargaining chair now for 10 years. So I do have the experience bargaining. I do have the experience dealing with difficult people, being a teacher. So I think I have what it takes to run. Also have the political experience. I was the vice president of Xavier University Democrats. Then I was the vice president of the Hamilton County Young Democrats, and then became president of Hamilton County Young Democrats. So I've been doing this for a while, kind of laying low in my town. But in my 12 years in office, I've quickly realized that collaboration between jurisdictions is absolutely necessary. In Mount Healthy, we worked with the Obama administration to secure stimulus funds to eliminate the blighted area, to replace the residents in better affordable housing, and to build a senior housing complex there. So we lowered the crime rate, we provided good housing. We've also collaborated with Springfield Township. We avoided tax levies by creating a joint economic district there. We've actually done that twice. And Chris Monzell's out here saying no, no, no under the guise of limited government. So I'm going to be out there working for us to beat him next year. Just want to say hi, let you know I'm here.
What's your name?
James Wolf,
James Wolf.
Now, when is that election?
2018, next year.
2018. Now, we are filled with speakers through when? Liz, tell us when you have speakers. Liz, speakers, how far ahead are we having speakers? We can have him speak.
December.
We have speakers through December, folks. Every Tuesday through December.
But if everybody's willing, we can start doubling up. We can do 12 to 1 and 1 to 2.
Oh,
Woohoo!
There you go. Okay, other announcements? Monica?
Hi, I'm the other half of this wonderful organization, and we are having a Monday evening event at the Red Rose Pizzeria, 6 p.m. It's in College Hill, costs us $10. Our speaker will be Samantha Searles with IJPC about human trafficking. I hope you can all join. It's going to be very interesting. June 5th, thank you. And then secondly, I want to remind you that I'm taking orders for any of the neighbors, welcome neighbor signs. If you want to get any, I'll see me about it. I'll take your name for orders. I put in an order. It should be in 2 weeks or so. Thank you.
I want to have you see my brother who's doing the videography here. And I am I get to put the video on our website, so it will be on our website. Warren County.
I guess I'm forever known to be Warren County. I'm forever known to be Warren County, even though I now live in Sharonville. But I was in Warren County for a number of years. I do want to mention that following Jim, that Mount Healthy must be a good breeding ground for Democrats because a generation ago, way before Jim was there, I was also bargaining chair, and I was also president of the association, and now I'm active in Democratic politics, as Ann Lee has been, and she's an alum of Mount Healthy, so we're well represented here today. But having said that, that's not why I wanted to speak. I just got an email earlier this morning that there are 2 events going on in Cincinnati this weekend that may be of interest. One is a strategic planning for progressive organizations. That's going to be happening Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at 700 East Walnut Street. And there is also a petition kickoff and training on gerrymandering going on at 10:30 in the morning at the Democratic headquarters on Webland. And there's also a similar event going on in Warren County. So it's happening all over the state. It's time to get involved. We need those 305,000 signatures. And we need them as soon as we can get them. It'd be great to get it on the ballot in 2017. But if we don't make it then, all the signatures will be good that we collect now, and we can use it in 2018, because what we're looking at is a constitutional amendment. So whatever signatures we get now and don't use in 2017, we can use them for the same drive in 2018. So make sure that you get people there, that you participate, because you all know how much we need to change this process. Gerrymandering. Thank you.
More announcements?
Some more.
Hello, just a couple quick announcements. June 2nd is National Gun Violence Awareness Day, so Moms Demand Action is saying if you want to stand up in solidarity to help end gun violence, wear orange. And also on Saturday at, is it Pyatt Park?
Yes.
Yes.
Hyatt Park.
Hyatt Park.
From 11 to 1, there is a rally for truth, demonstrations to call for urgent investigations into Russian interference in the U.S. election.
Yeah.
Checking into ties, Trump's ties to Russia, and also ties in his administration and his associates.
Can I say real quickly?
Yeah.
I put 2 new handouts up on the bar. One of them is how I always win the abortion argument. This is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because I was in this situation once when I needed a safe and legal abortion. So I don't care, where you stand on it. If you're interested, it's up there. And then we have something, David Little is working on Ohio taxpayers' lower drug prices. There's information about that up there. And there's only 10 copies of each because my printer's really slow. So I can make more if anybody needs them. Okay?
On Sunday, there is a die-in in front of Rob Portman's office at noon.
Yeah.
And it's to protest the Trump care and bring forth the information from the office of budget.
The downtown office?
Yes, at Third Enrollment at noon.
Third and Walnut at noon.
Diane.
Just want to remind you of what Butler County Dems, and they have their fundraiser on Saturday at receptions on Boy Mill. If you're interested, go to their website and you can sign up there.
Also, we have some naturalization ceremonies where new immigrants become citizens, and we need, the League of Women Voters need some people for some, to help get people registered to vote. So if you're interested in that, Anna, would you raise your hand? There you go, Anna Reisling, and you can see me and get a card from me, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with the right people. And I'll take you for a training this Friday if you are interested in going this Friday at 2 o'clock. That would be me. I'll even drive you there.
One more announcement. Tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. at Inwood Park on Vine Street Amos is organizing the March for Justice for Sam Dubose. It is meant to be a very peaceful demonstration and very prayerful demonstration, so we would like to let you know that that's going to be going on.
Good, thank you.
Can I follow up on that? I want to follow up on the comment on drug prices, because I heard a presentation on it, and everybody needs to know, signatures are being gathered right now for a constitutional amendment. The group that's doing this in Ohio tried it in California about a year ago, and they were unsuccessful. And that was because of the huge amount of money that the pharmaceutical industries put out in order to prevent it from happening. But the point is, the constitutional amendment is essentially going to say that we want the consumers of Ohio to be able to get the same prices for pharmaceuticals that the VA administration gets. The drug companies provide that to the VA, and yet, as you know, prices for things like EpiPens, insulin, and a whole host of other things are going through the roof. We pay a lot more than comparable countries all across Europe, Canada, anywhere else you look. This is a very important amendment. Ohio could lead the nation by making sure that we gather signatures and pass this amendment. So I want to make sure you know how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Oh, just a note, I belong to the FCNL, which is the Quakers National Committee on Lobbying. So this week we'll be visiting with Representative Winstrup. The two subjects will be health care and the tragedy of Pentagon waste.
Is Winston going to be there?
We make appointments with or without the representative. This time, Representative Winstrup will be there to discuss those two topics with us.
Wow.
TV shows.
When's the meeting?
They're a national organization. Okay, any more announcements?
When is the Friends meeting?
When is the,
Meeting. Sorry. Your meeting, when is it?
Well, our meeting is already, it's closed to anybody else right now because it's a very short meeting, so we have to redesign our points very succinctly. And so our meeting is Thursday, but however, if you would like to participate the next time around, we don't stop, we keep visiting all our representatives, so just look at fcnl.org, or you can contact me. We meet once a month, and you're welcome. Anybody's welcome to be. I happen to be grew up as a Catholic, so the Quakers call me a quacklick. So you don't have to be a Quaker to be part of the lobby group. It's a neutral. When you go in there, you're really going there to make friends and to discuss the issue. We don't take a partisan stand, but most of the things the Quakers stand for are the things the Democrats stand for.
okay, any more announcements? Last call, last call. On to our two wonderful speakers. Wait, I gotta introduce you. Oh, there's Sheriff Jim Neal. He's the tall one. I like having my picture taken by him because he's so different in height. But I have to stand on the other side of his gun because... okay, he is a second-generation law officer. He currently resides in Sailor Park with his wife Kim. He's a local boy, Western Hills, University of Cincinnati. He has done all kinds of study with the University of Cincinnati, graduate studies and research, graduated from the School of Police, Staff and Command at Northwestern University in Chicago, and he completed more than 4,000 hours of job training and education through the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Neal has over 30 years with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. He's a recipient of numerous awards, and he has extensive training and work experience with the correction divisions and enforcement. He rose to the rank of lieutenant commander. Jim proved himself to be a leader of the organization, which has led to several special assignments, including hazmat technician, commander of the bomb squad. Now that one takes a little bravery. Commander of the Patrol Academy and Drug Abuse Resistant Education, DARE. We've all seen DARE at being an instructor, just to name a few. So here we have, I'm going to introduce Michael Steers at the same time. So Michael Steers is very brave, I have to tell you, because he has 3 sons, aged 19, 14, and 11, all boys. And when you get to be 15 and a half, you can have your temps, and the 14-year-old turns. Anyway, he's been with the Sheriff's Department 21 years, since 1995. He's been with the Regional Narcotics Unit, with Over the Rhine Task Force. He's been in the Criminal Investigation Section, our version of the CSI, they call it CIS. He's been an assistant commander of the Heroin Task Force, and I don't think we could have 2 people in the world who are more qualified to speak on heroin in our community. So it's my pleasure to introduce first Sheriff Jim Neal.
Thank you. It's a small world. I got to meet Dave Kiefer just a few minutes ago. He hails from Wayne County. And the significance is that when this was the Northwest Territory, you had to have so many counties established to petition to be a state. Well, Wayne County was the 3rd county formed in the state. You know, the first 3 counties were named after our commanding generals during the Revolutionary War. Washington County was first, Hamilton County second, Wayne County was 3rd, and you're running for governor of the state.
All right.
Now, and I need to bring up James Wolfe again because him and I think we're related. And the reason I say that is his father-in-law Jimmy Newport was District 50 leader of Newport Steel. He was a rep, he was a union rep for Newport Steel, District 50, which include Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. And my father-in-law, Don Knoll, was the union president of Interlake Steel, and then when it merged with Newport Steel, they had a runoff between the two union presidents, and Dad got it. He was the union president for 25 years, but him and Jimmy Newport were very tight, along with that Harold Fisk fellow. So I got to meet Jim when he was a younger guy. I'm a little older than Jimmy, but I do feel like the kinship, because that's my base, is labor. You know, because I, as a police officer, was a member of a bargaining unit for 26 out of my 30 years, and like you said with the teachers, so I'm looking forward to working with you. Boy, wouldn't our father-in-laws be excited, the two of us working together, Sheriff and Commissioner. My father-in-law passed, but he'd be proud to see that day, because he was proud that I ran as a Democrat in Hamilton County for Sheriff. He was very proud of that, because he's a big-time Democrat in Northern Kentucky. But anyway, I better move on to the current business at hand, and that's the heroin epidemic. And it all got started back in 2012. Sheriff John Tharp up in Lucas County, he was the first sheriff to bite the head off this poisonous snake, what they call heroin. And it was real successful. He formed what they call the DART unit up there, drug abuse, it's an acronym, drug abuse. Well, anyway, team, but he deputized, you know,
Drug abuse resistance.
Well, that's there, drug abuse resistance education, but I think it's drug arrest team or something, drug abuse. But anyway, what they do is they, up in Lucas County, with the heroin epidemic, they've been not only looking for the predators, the dealers selling the product, but they're pointing those addicted into the right direction for recovery and treatment. And likewise down here, we're doing the same thing, because in law enforcement we've always been very good referrals for people in need. But during 2014, because of the work that was being done in Lucas County, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation sent down a head of that unit to speak with me about forming a similar team here in Hamilton County. And then several months later, I met with, after that meeting, I met with Chief Tom Sinan from Newtown, who says, you know, Sheriff, we've been going to these heroin summits, and for the most part, the experts are talking about what we should be doing. And he said, quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about it. We need to do something about it. And I said, and I mentioned that I had a similar talk with a head of Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, also known as BCI, on the same subject matter. So what we did, Tom and I, and he got Tom Fallon, a lieutenant in Norwood, to introduce the idea of forming a task force in Hamilton County. Now we introduced this idea to all the police chiefs, because in Hamilton County, all the police chiefs meet every month. And at this meeting, it was presented to the chiefs about forming a task force to go after these dealers, the traffickers, and to form a heroin task force. And so we formed the committee on the subject matter, and over a period of months, we put together not only a task force, but a matrix as to what cases, because our resources were limited. We have a very populated county, but initially we only had investigators in the unit. So we created a matrix to target those cases that we could, because otherwise your caseloads would just be, they'd be huge. And as an investigator myself, you know, when you start getting caseloads in the neighborhood of 30, 40, 50, it's much. It's very taxing on the, and you can burn out the investigator. So they created a matrix, and they've been very successful, 15 and 16, but I'll let Sgt Steers just go more into that. But anyway, from the committee, we formed a task force, and right out of the gate, these following agencies jumped on board with the human resources necessary to investigate these overdose deaths and near deaths. And they were Norwood Police Department, Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Ohio State Highway Patrol, and Cincinnati Police Department, and Harrison Police Department in year 1, 2015, had a part-timer in the unit. Now I'm going to go through a few stats for each year respectively. And then what I did, because this is a county-wide investigative unit, I deputized all these police officers to give them county-wide jurisdiction. So if you're a Norwood officer or if you're a city officer, you can investigate an overdose death anywhere in Hamilton County because they were deputized. And which is really significant for patrol because I don't know if you're familiar with their area of responsibility, but they patrol the all dedicated roadways in the state. And their jurisdiction is on the dedicated roadways, not the private properties. So deputizing a trooper, it gave him the ability, in this case a he, to investigate matters that occur outside the traffic way. So that's significant. But all of us working together formed the Heroin Task Force. And in 2015, they had 70 cases that were initiated. 53 were heroin overdose death investigations. 9 were non-fatal overdose investigations, and 8 were heroin-related drug investigations. Of the 53 death investigation, 9 were closed by arrest, or 17% of the cases were closed by arrest. That is very profound because it's hard to get the evidence you need to prosecute these dealers for causing the death of another. Of the non-fatal overdose investigations, 4 were closed by arrest, or 44%. And then drugs recovered for that year, 385 grams of heroin, 204 grams of marijuana, 5 fentanyl strips, and 8 tablets of oxycodone. Now what they can do when they seek prosecution, they have 2 options. They can either go prosecute in-state, or they can go for federal prosecutions. And of these cases in 2015, arrests on state prosecutions were 25 felony defendants, 33 counts of trafficking in heroin, 1 count of trafficking in fentanyl, 14 counts of possession of heroin, 1 count of possession of fentanyl, and 1 count of possession of oxycodone, 1 count of endangering children, 1 count of tampering with evidence, 5 counts of corrupting another with drug, 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Congratulations on that, Mike. That's, like I said, that's a tough charge. And 1 count of operating a vehicle intoxicated. And then on federal prosecutions, where we sent the cases to our federal partners here, there were 5 defendants, 10 counts of distribution of heroin with death enhancement, and 1 count of maintaining a premise for distribution of narcotics, and 1 count of possession of firearms and furtherance of drug trafficking offense. There's stiffer penalties at the federal level, so some of these serious offenders, if we can, we go after the federal charges. But also in 2015, that was the year I kicked off that heroin billboard campaign to help kickstart this effort that we were taking. It was a 2-year contract that I had with Norton Signs for 28 signs for $100,000 a year for 2 years, starting in March of 15 through March of 17. And we used drug seized dollars to rent the space on these billboards, so it did not come out of the county general fund. It came out of dollars that were seized. Thank you. And of the tips that we got from the billboards culminated into a number of these arrests, and we probably seized more dollars in assets than we spent on the billboards. We had a very productive year in 16. We seized over $1 million in currency from these dealers, and a number of these dollars will be repurposed back to the treatment programs and the groups that are helping us with the Heroin Coalition, which is also which we're a part of. The Heroin Task Force is part of the Heroin Coalition. The coalition is the entire community resources coming together to deal with this epidemic. And then the 16 stats. In 16, the difference is we went from 8.5 investigators to 10 investigators. We picked up a special agent in DEA, and we also picked up another trooper from Ohio State Highway Patrol. We now have 10 investigators, but real quickly, because I don't want to, he's your boots on the ground guy, you need to hear from him. But some of the stats that you'll see how they multiplied big time. Cases initiated, remember I said 70 and 15? In 2016 there was 164 cases initiated. 142 were heroin overdose death investigations. This is in Hamilton County, 142 heroin death investigations. And 20 were non-fatal overdose investigation, near deaths. And the reason these weren't death investigations is because these overdose victims were brought back with Narcan. And they had 2 heroin-related drug investigations in 16. But anyhow, like I said, this task force, we've been embedded with the Heroin Coalition, and we were like one of the first teams formed in the coalition. And then since, through the efforts of the Board of County Commission, because they're in the seat where they can bring all the players to the table, because of the uniqueness of their position. And so we have, the coalition is made up of not only the Heroin Task Force, the law enforcement piece, but you got the detox groups, you got the treatment groups, you got the recovery groups, prevention and education groups, medical, all working together to try to, to turn around the heroin epidemic here in Hamilton County. One more note, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike. I was a DARE officer for 12 years. When DARE was strong in Ohio, there was a lot of naysayers. Well, DARE don't work, but I can tell you all this. When DARE was strong in Ohio, we had no epidemic either. So, Mike, come on up.
Thanks, Sheriff.
When I have gone around and talked to different groups in the past, one of the questions that I've asked different groups is, how many people in this room have been personally affected by this heroin epidemic? And occasionally it would be like this, a smattering of hands in the room. And I point out to people that no, everybody in this room is being personally affected by this epidemic. Whether it's that you're paying more in healthcare costs, you're paying more in retail costs because of the thefts and related crimes that come along with the heroin abuse. This epidemic does affect every single person here in a very personal way. The task force that we started was something new and had never been done before, especially in Hamilton County. The partnerships that we have in this task force, it had never happened before. We have local, state, and federal agencies working together and actually sharing information. That had never been an issue in this county. You just weren't able to do it. And so the fact that we were able to get these groups together and get people working together on the same page for a common mission is something in and of itself that is very impressive. What we do is also a different type of investigation. I've worked in standard investigative assignments before. I've worked in narcotics assignments before. And this is kind of a hybrid of a narcotic and a standard investigation. We're not a drug investigative unit. We're more of a death investigation unit that handles drug-related deaths. We do also investigate some of the non-fatal overdoses, but the sad truth is we have so many fatal overdoses that it's difficult for us to do the investigations in the non-fatals because we have to target these fatal investigations. So the way that it works is we get notified if there's an opiate overdose. The officers at the scene will evaluate the items of evidentiary value. They'll call me. I'll talk to the officer at the scene and make a determination if we're going to respond to that scene. Usually if they're calling me, I'm going to go ahead and send somebody out. So I send my investigators to the scene, and we then treat that scene as if it was a homicide. We're going to process evidence, we're going to collect forensic evidence, we're going to interview neighbors, we're going to photograph the scene, and we are going to try to work this scene backwards to try and determine who the source of the opiate was that caused this person's death. When we first formed the task force, we looked at the difficulties that we were going to be facing in prosecution. Most of the time, the only witness to this sale is going to be a person who is deceased. And so we're going to have to rely on forensic evidence to try and link us to the seller. And we were right, it is. It's incredibly difficult. It's one of the things that I explain to the families when we initiate these cases is that I don't want to give you a false impression that this is going to be a quick and easy fix. But it can be done. We anticipated our success rate to be at about 3%, and we're at about 17%, which is much better than anybody thought that we would be able to do. And I attribute that to the team of people that we have working. I've worked in different task forces before. Usually, somebody on that team is a lazy one. Somebody on that team is not pulling their weight. I don't have that person on this team. Hopefully that doesn't mean that I'm that person. But I don't have a lazy person on my team. I've got a great group of people that believe in what they're doing. And it's something that we're going to continue to try and improve upon. We've picked up little tidbits on how to further these cases as we've gone on. The sad thing is, though, is that the epidemic itself is not going away. The sheriff mentioned that in 2016 we had over 160 cases. It's not even June yet, and I checked my case book before I came over here, and we're already at 120 cases for 2017. And that is with us getting a little bit more stringent on the types of cases that we respond to, just because of the caseload. This touches every aspect of our society. There is not a single community in Hamilton County where I have not stood over the body of a dead person because of this epidemic. Not a single community is exempt. And I've never seen anything like this. One thing I did want to touch on also, and hopefully everybody here will take this back with them and tell other people. I've been hearing, they were talking about it on 700 WLW on the radio. People are talking about gray death, fentanyl, carfentanil, all of the different opiate analogs that are causing so many deaths. I get worried when I hear people talking about things like gray death. Yes, there is an opiate analog out there that some samples of it are gray. But you can't look at these drugs and tell if they're safe or not. The color of the drug that you're purchasing says nothing about what it is. And that kind of worries me when people popularize these statements like gray death. I mean, someone buys something that's nice and white and they feel like it's safe. That's not true. There's no way for you to know the purity or what it is that you've purchased from someone. And so that's something that I hope that you'll take home with you is it doesn't matter if you think you're buying heroin, it doesn't matter if you think you're buying cocaine. We've recently had cases where people thought they were buying cocaine, and in fact, they purchased what was a little bit of cocaine mixed with fentanyl and they died. Yes, ma'am?
You know, from a marketing standpoint, it's not really economical to kill your user. You want to keep them addicted but alive as long as possible. How comes now there is so much overdose that for their market does not make sense? They are killing their market.
It doesn't make sense to someone who is not dealing with an addicted mind. These dealers that are dealing the fentanyl and the carfentanil, they're advertising that they have the fire, that they have stuff that's going to kill you. That's an advertisement. If you are caught deep in the throes of this addiction, it means that you haven't been able to get high off of heroin in a long time. All you're doing at this point is trying to stop being sick. You wake up in the morning feeling sick. Well, if all of a sudden you get a hold of some fentanyl and you get high again for the first time in a long time, now you're going to be looking for that fentanyl. Even though you know it might kill you, you're going to look for that fentanyl. And once you've used fentanyl long enough that you're not getting high off the fentanyl, you're just stopping being sick, and you find out that someone has carfentanil. Even though you know there's a good chance it's going to kill you, your addicted mind is going to tell you to go try that drug. To a logical person, to a person thinking logically, it's a horrible business model. But the people that are caught in the throes of addiction are not thinking logically at all. They're thinking with an addicted mind. And so even though they know that this is probably going to kill them, they're going to use it, and they're going to seek it out. I've talked to people who have survived these overdoses. It's required 12, 15 doses of Narcan sometimes to bring someone around. And I've asked them, do you know what you were buying? Oh yeah, I was buying the fire. They know that it's probably going to kill them, but that's how strong the addiction is. You've heard a lot of people say about, yes sir?
Just real quickly, I understand Narcan's working sometimes less and less in the last year or two, is that right?
That's right. Narcan, it was designed for hospital, the opiates that are commonly prescribed in hospital. And the reason that drug was designed was in case of an accidental overdose in a hospital. A nurse accidentally pushes 4 milligrams instead of 2, and now you have some Narcan that would help to reverse those effects. When you start dealing with fentanyl and carfentanil, which are, fentanyl when it's administered in the hospital is administered in the micrograms, and there's a anesthesiologist at the scene right there watching you as it's being administered to you. Carfentanil was not meant to ever be used in humans. It's a large game tranquilizer. And so when you start seeing these potent opioids, the Narcan just doesn't work as well, and it takes a whole lot more of it to take effect.
Sorry.
That's okay. But it doesn't stop at just the carfentanil. There are synthetic opioids that you can buy through the mail. There's a designer opioid out right now, U4770 is the chemical name for it. And we've seen samples of that here in Hamilton County. So the desire for it is constantly finding ways to get around our attempts to stop it. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
You know what, after you ask your question, could we wait until he's finished and then we can all ask our questions? You know, wait, I don't want him to lose his place again. Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so again, our entire purpose here is not just to arrest drug dealers, is to find a specific drug dealer who sold to a specific person on a specific date. You've heard people say, a lot of times people will stand up here and say, we can't arrest our way out of this problem. And to a large extent, I agree with that. But there's some people that need arresting. Some of these people absolutely need to be locked up, and those are the people that we're going after. We want people to be out there thinking, hey, if I sell this and this person overdoses, they're going to come after me. And we have heard from people out there that they know if someone dies that we're coming after them. If you have a bad criminal history and you sell drugs and cause the death of another person and we take you on federal charges, you're looking at 20 years. That's starting off. We've got some great convictions in state court also. Recently had a case where 15 years in state court, which that's a significant conviction. We're not looking to lock up the users. We're looking to target the specific dealers who are killing people. And in our interviews with these drug dealers afterwards, they know what they're selling. This isn't a surprise. They know that this dope is killing people. They know that they have fentanyl. They know that they have carfentanil. They don't care. The fentanyl and the carfentanil are cheaper than actual heroin. Actual heroin, you have to wait for the poppies to be cultivated, you have to process it, and you have to turn it into heroin. These synthetics are made in a lab. And when you think of fentanyl that you get in the hospital, that's pharmaceutical grade fentanyl. You know exactly how strong it is, you know the potency, you know the purity of that. When these things are made in a clandestine lab by people who are less than chemists, there's no telling what the actual potency, what the actual strength of these synthetic opioids are. And so there is no safe amount of dope that can be used right now. A lot of the death scenes that we go to will be younger people who are just trying heroin and they think, well, I'm going to snort it. You know, I'm not a junkie. I'm not going to inject it. I'm going to snort it. That's just as deadly. Plenty of our scenes are from people snorting it. And I can't get that. I understand people who are caught in addiction. I understand people who are having trouble getting away from the addiction. I can't for the life of me understand how anybody, with all of the information that's out there, how anybody today decides one day, you know what, that heroin stuff, I've been hearing good things about it. I'm going to try that today. I can't figure that out. But for some reason, it's still happening. Give me just a second, okay? I'm going to wrap up here in just a second. The best hope to stop this is to stop the demand. The supply end, we've been trying to stop the supply end since the war on drugs began. There has to be a way to stop the demand. And the way to stop the demand is through education of our kids. Sheriff talked about the DARE program. For some reason that went away for a long time. I think it's a good program. I think the more you talk to kids about these things, the more you're honest with kids about these things, I think the better chance we have of educating them. When did that go away, Sheriff?
In Hamilton County, we have 2 schools in Sycamore Township, that's it, for DARE, and they're both Catholic schools. There's just, you know, the naysayers said it didn't work. So, it's phased out.
So I'm ready to take some questions now. I know we had some people that had some questions, and I'm going to start with you back there. You've got the microphone.
I'll be able to hear you.
Okay, I just talk loud.
Okay.
I just have a question about, you mentioned synthetic labs. Are we getting that same distribution of labs in the rural areas like we had with meth, or is this a Mexican brought-in phenomenon?
For the most part, the clandestine labs are in Mexico and China. As of today, I've never seen a report of any lab being found here in the United States. And the reason for that is that the precursor chemicals needed in order to produce this are banned in the United States. But they are legal in China, and they're easy to be imported into Mexico. So the labs are, for the most part, run by the Sinaloa drug cartel, and it's moving up the same traditional narcotics routes that all the other drugs have been coming in.
Two quick comments. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, but I wish the feds would step up and get the big guys. I mean, my hunch is that we have big-time, wealthy business people, you know, like Trump, not Trump, but people like that, who are bringing this stuff in and not getting caught because they're politically connected. I wish we could do more of that. I know you can't do that. Second thing is, I'm for going back to probating people like we used to do. I know that was abused, but people with mental illness and addiction need to be locked up in a hospital for a year against their will to save their lives, because they are not going to volunteer for help. And I wish we could do that, because that we could save a lot of people by doing that.
And that would be something that has to be handled through the legislature, obviously. Your first question, or first comment, though, it kind of struck a chord with me, because when I was in the regional narcotics unit, we targeted major traffickers at that time. And that was when cocaine was really big. I mean, at that time, in the early 2000s, late 1990s, you didn't see much heroin at all. And here in the greater Cincinnati area, there was probably, at any given time, 10 to 15 different people in this region who were selling kilo or greater amounts of cocaine. That's it. And those were the people that we were targeting. We were going after them. Today, I couldn't even begin to speculate how many people in the greater Cincinnati area have access to kilo or more weight of heroin. It's everywhere. So, yes?
I want to grab the mic here. Okay, I want to address some things that each of you said. First of all, with DARE, I was a DARE student. I don't, that's not it. Why do we have this crisis? Because pain pills were overprescribed. They gave them out like it was candy, and like you said, the high wasn't strong enough anymore, so they got to something heavier, because yeah, who does wake up in the morning like, I think I'll try that heroin stuff? Exactly right. We had this big problem with the prescription opiates, like Route 23 down through Portsmouth. That was like the pain pill highway. So that was a big issue. It's not just about teaching kids like, oh, don't do drugs are evil, because I have my own issues. There are some things that I don't think need to be illegal. We'll just say it like that. But I'm losing my train of thought here. But we need to figure out a way to go about this that is really getting to the issue, and that is that these are a lot of people who have been addicted to like OxyContin or Vicodin, whatever, and then they're getting something harder. But yes, we do need to go after the dealers. So good job, guys. Keep it up.
Thank you. And back to your question, 50% of our population in our county jail are, when they're interviewed by medical, when they're admitted into the general population and they're interviewed by medical, 50% of our population are heroin users. So what they're doing to support their habits, they're committing crimes to get the dollars they need to support their habits. So it's, but anyway, that acronym that I was talking about earlier, our Drug Abuse Reduction Task Force. And I want to introduce a couple more deputies that are here in the audience. The Chief Deputy, Mark Schoonover. He's my right-hand guy. And Deputy Jeff Harvey, him and I taught there at Three Rivers local schools together. And then my PIO, another acronym, Public Information Officer, Mike Robinson.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to piggyback on what Marlena was saying. It seems to me almost everybody knows, and all the kids know that cigarette smoking causes cancer. It doesn't deter them. You know, the educational piece of it doesn't stop them. I understand that it probably hasn't affected people think they're looking at imminent death. There may be a deterrent, but they still do it. And you don't have to have an addicted personality to begin doing it. So there must be other things we have to do as well. And just one other thing, when you mentioned some statistics, 50%, I remember about 10 years ago when we were talking about spending $100 million to build a new prison here in, it was either I think it was the Hamilton County prison. And the number 2 man on the Cincinnati police force was being interviewed, and he said something like 80% of the incarcerated people in the prisons at the moment were there for drug-related crimes. And I thought, well, there's your answer. I mean, to put those two together, we don't have any more room in prisons, and 80% of the people in prisons are there for drug-related crimes. So that kind of dovetails on what you were saying, that we probably do need to look at it more as a disease and more as a treatable disease. And but you're right, when we're talking about people who have provided the materials that have imminently killed people, it's a homicide, or something like a homicide.
Right. And that's, we charge with an involuntary manslaughter. And to go back to one of the things you were saying, and this is just my personal opinion, I do agree that we've hurt our education part of this by not being honest always in the past. And for a long time, we were telling people that marijuana was the worst thing in the world. That if you know, that the Reefer Madness show, that was the movie Reefer, yeah, you were going to lose your mind if you smoked marijuana. Well, that's not being honest about the dangers of the drug. You know, I teach my kids very, very bluntly about the dangers of drugs. I'm very honest with them. You know, marijuana, no, it's not going to kill you, but it is going to make you okay with sitting around eating Funyuns all day. Heroin is going to kill you. There's no question that's going to kill you. So I think that when it comes to education, we do have to be honest with the kids and really stress the real dangers.
But my question is, what else can we do?
What else? Well, we can do what we're doing right now, which is targeting the traffickers who are causing harm. We can continue to do the reduction of the supply as it comes in. We have to do something to stem the flow of illegal drugs coming into this country. The cost of heroin in this city is ridiculously low. I was at a conference about 6 months ago in Northern Ohio. Law enforcement officers from all over the state were there. And one of the narcotics officers from Northern Ohio told me that they had just finished making a bust where they bought a gram of heroin from somebody for $500. A gram of heroin here in Hamilton County runs anywhere between $120 and $160. So we have to do some more to stop the drugs from coming in.
So I have actually two questions. The first one is anything being done medically to get people when they are involved in these before they die to help them? Is there a resource for those people if they decide they want to do something? Maybe they don't because they're messed up. My second one is there a socioeconomic group that is more into this than others?
The answer to your first question is yes. There is some medical work being done. There's medical assisted rehabilitation. There's other camps that don't believe in medical assisted rehabilitation. They believe in going cold turkey. There's some research being developed, and there's some new shots that are being worked on to help people with their withdrawal and their rehab. So there is a lot of work being done on the medical side. And as I said at the beginning, this crosses every socioeconomic background, every racial and ethnic. Pardon me?
Do you see it in the high schools?
We're not seeing it much in high school. It starts usually right around, the low end is right around 23, 24. High end is in the low 60s. But it's over every socioeconomic area. Yes, sir.
Can't turn it off.
Just one thought was regionally, because there's a river and you have bridges, so what's the regional force to work on this, number one? And then number two is, don't forget alcohol. I mean, alcohol is a drug, and it's common in combination, and I'll make it real quick. Number three is, I had I think it's a major operation, but anyway, my doctor gave me a whole 50 pills of oxycodone in case I had pain. I had one of those pills. I only took one, and 49 were left. And I eventually found a place in the police department. I finally put it in their mailbox. But if I had somebody in my house, could have used them and all that, but just some comments, that's all.
Yes.
I was wondering.
Get it closer to your mouth.
Turn it on, push the button on.
Okay, the price that is so low here in Ohio could be due to the fact that we have the UPS, the DHL, because I read in the news that, you know, when you said that the logs are from China, some of these packages arrive via mail, and so via air mail, and the price could be low because we're closer to the, you know, big distributions. And so why it would be possible to have each package that arrives be sniffed by a dog, since, like, you know, every passenger has to go through the screening. We have the packages doing the screening in a way to lower the intake from China.
There's very little that's coming in through the mail. Occasionally, some stuff does get in through the mail or from parcel services, but over 90% of all the narcotics that are moved are being moved up the traditional narcotics trade routes. And for this area of the country, that is, it comes in Arizona, it's brought up and it's warehoused in Chicago. From Chicago, it's distributed to Cincinnati, and from Cincinnati, it breaks off to Dayton and Columbus, and then down south and east to Virginia and Florida. So Cincinnati is one of the reasons the cost is low here is because along the traditional trade route, Cincinnati just happens to be one of those stops that's very near the warehousing point in Chicago. So there's a lot of product here because it's distributed from here.
But is the Chinese stuff coming into Arizona, or how's
Very few times are we seeing direct mail to the United States from the Chinese companies. Usually it's being shipped from China to Mexico, processed, and then sent to the United States. Yes, sir.
So I've been working in northern Kentucky for the last 4 years.
Close to your mouth, quiet your mouth.
Well,
Yeah, there you
okay,
go.
so I've been working in northern Kentucky with Jeremy Engel and the St. Elizabeth healthcare system for the last 4 years, trying to build up the other side of this, which is how you take people off the drug and reduce the market demand. And one of the problems that we've had in America is that we've never offered treatment to everyone who wants it, when they want it, at the right time, with the right amount of consistent health care delivery. So, you know, that is a big deal. One of the very coolest things that Ohio's doing right now is increasing the amount of things that Medicaid covers in the area of drug treatment. So it didn't used to cover peer support. It made it very hard to keep a person with you as you were moving along the way. And people who are using these drugs are very damaged. I mean, if you're not traumatized by the time you start using these drugs, you are by the experience of using these drugs. So you're not thinking very clearly. And the whole experience of using our current system, I mean, we offer people things like, you need to hit bottom is something we say to people when they're already miserable. We offer them waiting lists. We, if they have a mental health concern, we tell them we can't handle your mental health concern until you quit the drugs, or you can't handle your drug concern until we get treatment for your mental health condition. There's just a lot of things that people are working on to try and fix that on the treatment side and build things up. So it's not all enforcement. Enforcement is like defense, and offense is actually getting people off the street. So what we're currently working on in northern Kentucky is on the table over there. You can pick that up and look at it. But and so thanks.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Real quick on the response. What we're doing here in Hamilton County, because our county jail is ground zero, there are a group of addicted offenders that want treatment. And we have a recovery pod for both female, and we're getting ready to start a recovery pod for males. So we're doing that with the peer mentoring, and we're working on that. And also in the Hamilton County Jail. Also in the Hamilton County Jail, we're isolating all of our offenders that come to us that are are serious chronic users, and we're putting them together so our medical staff has access to them as a group and not scattered throughout the facility, so they can monitor them in a more timely manner and monitor their symptoms and treat their symptoms. And when they have issues that are where they need, like, to be transported to UC for medical treatment, we have that ability now to be more responsive to these addicted offenders because they're all housed together.
My question is about the over-prescribing, and I think briefly one of you mentioned medical, and I'm
out of here. I've been an addiction person for 50 years. To me, the worst is methamphetamine, and I'm not seeing much of it around here. I think you guys are doing a good job of keeping it out of here. I think it's worse than heroin. Second, our treatment programs are not long enough. I volunteered at the VA. They're there 21 days. It takes a year for a person's brain to heal. Now, we have a few long-term programs: First Step Home for Women, Joseph House for Veterans, Prospect House, where they can stay for years. And the success rate is a lot higher. But it's like putting Band-Aid on cancer.
Breaking the rules, Janet.
I know. I'd like to ask you, and you and those of you who are experts in this audience, how much of the education of prevention, the abduction of our dealers, and the treatment, long-term treatment, is dependent on federal dollars?
So I couldn't give you an exact figure. I can tell you that my task force probably could not exist without the assistance of the federal dollars. We get federal funding that helps cover our overtime costs, which is tremendous. I have 10 people for, like I said, up to this point, 120 cases this year. And so we have to respond at all times. So without our federal assistance for the overtime funds, I know our task force couldn't exist. But I think that the partnerships that, at least in regards to this crisis, the partnership that we have with our federal partners in law enforcement has been tremendous. It's been very helpful. I have no complaints about the law enforcement partnership, and I don't know enough on the medical side to speak intelligently on that.
Jim, about prevention, is that funded by federal dollars? Would your prevention in the schools be federal dollars?
DARE was. Back in the day, DARE received federal supplements. And then when we seize an asset, for every the first 100,000 that we seize, 20% of that has to be used for drug abuse resistance education, so it gives us the ability to continue to fund. And then subsequent 100,000, 10%. So for 200,000, 30% of that has to be spent on drug abuse resistant education. And I say, who better than the Heroin Coalition partners to support, because we're working together to try to make a difference with this epidemic. So I do have some resources that I can even use that are local to help with this fight.
Thank you.
And thank you to Sheriff Neil and Sgt Steers. Thank you. And thank you to you, our wonderful audience, for your great questions and your concern for being here today. That was really nice. Be sure to take the containers on the side table over there behind Anna. Finish off the food. We don't want to leave, they just toss it out, so please make sure you get some food, and any food that you're going to use, take it home, please. We don't want to waste. Our next speakers will be Mary Ronan next week, who is the superintendent of Cincinnati Public Schools, retiring so she can speak freely. June 13th is Emma Clausio at the Mill Creek Watershed, and the 20th is Dr. Richard Boatman on single-payer health care, which impacts all of what we were talking about here today. So we have a great set of speakers ready for you. See our handout of coming speakers. We will not be taking off this summer. We're only taking off for the 4th of July. Many teachers are looking forward to their summer vacations. Liz, we're scheduling to where? What month?
We're scheduled through the middle of December.
We're scheduled through the middle of December, so there are good things yet to come from this group. Feel free to come back. There's no membership. You've noticed that there's no membership fee. It's all donations. Thank you for coming. Take the food. And again, thank you to Sgt Steers and Sheriff Neil.
I was being part of the task force or some discussion anyway. But if you could speak a little bit to their education and or re-education in relation to prescribing 50 pills.
And there's been change here in Ohio. There's been a lot of changes in legislation on how opiates can be prescribed. Some of those things are making it more difficult for people that are actually sick to get medicine. I understand the thought process behind it, but yeah, opiates of any kind can be addictive. And many of the people that we talk to say that they started by abusing prescription opiates. It's when you sit down and talk to the people that say that they began with prescription opiates, usually they'll eventually tell you, yes, it's not that I accidentally got addicted, it's that I was supposed to take 2 every 4 hours for pain and I was taking 12 every 3 hours for fun. And that's how they got addicted to their prescription opiates. But it is true, you can get addicted to any prescription medication, and I think that the doctors all around the country have really taken notice of the dangers of prescribing and overprescribing medication.
And our last question of the day?
Hey, 2 comments. You guys ought to brag about keeping